It's the year 300 after the conquest. The story I'm about to tell is tinfoil. The names have been preserved to protect the fictional. So I was at the Citadel doing research for my latest scroll, and I went to the restricted section requesting to see anything they had on Danes the Dreamer's signs and portents. The wizened maester gave me a piercing look before he left to come back with a single piece of parchment that held no more information than that which was oft quoted in countless other histories that I have read. I returned the parchment and went to a tavern for an ale and to organize my thoughts. Shortly, I was joined by a mysterious hooded man who drank with me. He invited me on a trek into the High Tower. I jumped at the opportunities to get a look inside. I was given a perfunctory tour, which ended in a room at the top of the tower. There, in the room, which contained several glass candles, was a woman. She questioned me about my interest in Danes writings, although I had not spoken of them to a single soul. She asked me what I thought of dreams. She smiled at my answers and gestured to the nearest glass candle. She rested her hand on it, a small cut like you would get from a parchment, appearing on her finger, leaving a smear of her blood on the candle. The surface of the candle began to shift, and I saw a lady dressed in red, wearing a dark red wooden lacquered mask. Behind her, I could see a window on a city of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. She named herself Q. What she then told me went against centuries of entrenched thought that fire magic in the Targaryen bloodline was passed from the king to the son and heir. The bloodline's true source was the women from Valyria through Rhaenys. Her mother, Valyna Velaryon, had a mother who was a Targaryen. I saw the letter Daria Martell gave to Aegon. It was from Rhaenys, who survived her dragon's death, and because of a dream, changed her name to Dane to hide her purple eyes and silver golden hair, and married Daenerys' only son so that her daughter's line would rule in Dorne. After that, she went to Starfall to live out her dream of having many children away from our maesters in King's Landing. I saw that Viserys II's wife, Lara Rogar, had an uncle in the Martell court that later became Prince Consort. The histories show Lara's mother as unknown, but she was born when Sarah Targaryen was 48. Her grandmother, her mother's mother, Daeron II, married Mariah Martell, whose father was Prince of Dorne. The histories do not mention that her mother's mother's mother was a princess of Dorne, descendant from Rhaenys Targaryen. Diana Dane, down in Dorne, was also descended on the maternal side from the line of Rhaenys. If Aegon V's son's wife Jenny was of Rhaenys blood, he would have sat the Iron Throne. The lady in the room removed her hand from the candle and the vision faded. You see what we Hightowers are up against: blood and prophecy. If this bloodline is allowed to flourish and produce this prince that was promised, he will gain support by winning the coming fight in the north. This glory will bestow a power that would be impossible to shift. We can't let that happen unless it's through the Hightowers. We've allowed Targaryens to marry into our line in hopes that the offspring will be this prince that we can control. Rhaenyra's granddaughter, Rhaena, had 6 daughters with Garmund Hightower. Better the north be wiped out than dragons reign again in Westeros. Munkin was worth his salt, turning Aegon IV's mind against his destiny. Thank goodness we are rid of that Blackwood bastard, Bloodraven, killed beyond the wall. He caused us a lot of grief. If not for him, the Targaryens would have torn themselves apart in the first Blackfyre Rebellion. Dragons are too much power in the hands of a single family. Valyria had 40 families to keep each other in check. Even then they set up the Valyrian freehold and let blasphemy and immorality run wild. The abominations of their blood and fire mages when they took over the slave trade from geese were limited to Essos at the time, but then Aenar the Exile brought 5 of those weapons to Westeros. 2 died before the Conqueror's time. With Aegon trying to curry favor with his future subjects, we were able to introduce maesters with their moon tea to court, but it doesn't always work. They saw that when Targaryen babies were born too early, they were deformed with wings and scales. We circulated this information to the people to show their inhumanity. Unfortunately, some people saw their differences and thought them closer to gods. Regrettably, it was not in a maester's repertoire to create a tea to make men infertile, but it seems that they have accomplished that in Pentos. The Hightowers have the blood of the first men, but more importantly, the blood of the great empire of the Dawn and of the Andals. Our Andal forefathers replaced our great empire ancestors ancestors' Church of Starry Wisdom with the Starry Sept and the Faith of the Seven. Andals married their daughters to First Men Lords to bring the faith into the castles. We ruled the Seven Kingdoms through Septon and Maester when there were no Targaryens on the mainland or Rhoynar and Dorne. We can rule again. Marjorie is the daughter of a Hightower. We have not had Hightower blood on the throne since Aegon II. If the Hightowers could lead the charge in the north, we could retain the power. We cannot see this Vagon with Arianne Martell or this Daenerys with her dragons to take the Iron Throne in this triumph. We got rid of the deadly dragons and their riders and their bloodline, but they won't stay gone. When Munkin came up with a salve that could penetrate the shell of the dragon eggs and kill the contents, we sent him off to King's Landing to replace Maester Orwyle. We started with King's Landing, but it took time to get to the eggs on Dragonstone. A generation after the dance, we had the Maesters teach that the dragons got smaller and sickly towards the end, when the truth was they were just killed off young, and the last dragon was sickly, letting us know that we were not using enough salve. When Aegon V started hoarding eggs, we had to be sure and sent some of the salve with Pycelle. I don't know where those eggs that Daenerys hatched came from, but we will try to ensure that they will never lay a clutch of eggs that we will not taint. In some of my visions, I have seen a crown of blue roses atop the wall, looking across at a storm coming down from the wastelands. I was hoping Maester Luwin could help tell me what that meant. Ice magic in the blood flows in both sexes. It manifests in an ability to join minds with animals. Like dragon fire and volcanoes, it's made stronger in proximity to the weirwood trees the Andal axes felled. She was becoming flushed and frantic, explaining her family's plans. Her eyes pierced mine, and I was afraid to interrupt her to ask about Betha Blackwood. I'll have to research her line when I get back to the Citadel. We've been trying to infiltrate the stubborn north for centuries. We got Maester Kennet into Cregan's court to remove all traces of the old gods. He shipped giant's bones and anything with runes on it to the Citadel so that we could tell the people of the north that their old gods were nothing but grumpkins and snarks. Queen Alysanne and he ended some of the more barbaric rituals, such as First Night, women giving birth beneath the heart tree, and using the Black Gate to send bastard babies to the children of the forest. Maester Kennet helped get rid of those blasted direwolves, secretly buying pelts from the hunters as incentive and shipping them south. One of our own bastards, Maester Wallace, got Rickard to send his heir and first son away to be fostered, and the Stark heir betrothed to a southerner, just not south enough. Given enough time, we could have gotten Ned or the younger son Benjen. We knew the heir Brandon was too hot-headed to be long on this plane. We kept that Ashara Dane girl from the Harrenhal tourney from birthing a Stark baby. Hot-headed Brandon started a war, and the Tully match went forward on his death. Then Wallace disappeared. I've always wondered if the youngest Stark was banished to the Wall for his involvement in that deed. Maester Luwin had been attached to Riverrun, so we sent him north with Catelyn Tully. He seems to have gone native towards the end, but we finally did get a sept built in Winterfell. We tried to put a Hightower in another power position in the north, but my youngest sister proved not up to the task, and now in Volantis with her Mormont husband banished. The heirs to Winterfell unfortunately now have Tully Went blood. If only Wallace had survived long enough to put a Hightower in Winterfell instead. There were several Hightower daughters older than Lynesse that Eddard and Benjen could have married. We had Loras Tyrell promoting my niece to King Robert. Her mother was Allery, but he died, and Marjorie ended up with the younger brother Renly Baratheon, who also died. Thankfully, that granted her a pass to King's Landing. She's married 3 kings now and is the queen. We need to keep her on the throne no matter what. Her wild eyes began to soften and the flesh left her face. She enjoined me to send her a copy of the parchment that I was working on immediately. I would still be allowed to work on it as long as the Hightower was kept in the loop. A knock on the door brought an acolyte from the Citadel into the room with a tray that contained a parchment, ink, wax, and a glass stylus. He handed the tray to the lady and left the room. She cut her finger gingerly with the stylus and handed it to me. I pricked my finger with it and signed the non-disclosure scroll she presented to me. She dismissed me, and I slowly walked down the stairs thinking about what I saw. I am a servant to information, but I also have a family and have to eat. I could be banned from the largest library on Westeros. I could be blacklisted from any sources of income in my field. Maesters are taught poisons. I cannot guarantee my family's fortunes or safety if I cross this lady. I will do the research. I will write my scroll. I know only future generations may be able to discover it in the bowels of the Citadel, but it will never see the light of day during my lifetime. I will have to rely on a safer subject for my fortunes. The War of the Five Kings maybe? Maybe not.